Every runner is different. Different weights, heights, gaits, strides. Each has different goals and ways of running. That is why there are so many different running shoes. Having so many choices is good, because it means a runner has a better chance of finding a running shoe that blends the right combination of features to suit the runner's needs. But the complex array of running footwear and technologies is also bewildering to the consumer. This is why the running specialist's knowledge is so important to help a customer find the right pair of running shoes. In this module, we will cover the essential biomechanics of running, which will later help you recommend footwear to suit a runner's individual needs. Running biomechanics is the study of human body movement during running and related forces. It's a pretty fancy word that shouldn't be used to overshadow a simple concept. How do running shoes really work? This module describes main biomechanical concepts as they relate to running footwear. Nearly 1/4 of all the bones in the human body are located in the feet. These bones can be divided into 3 main sections: the hindfoot, midfoot, and the forefoot. Muscles in the foot are used to provide the foot with balance and movement. Tendons attach muscles to the bones, and ligaments hold the tendons in place and stabilize the joints. During running, the hindfoot absorbs initial contact, the midfoot flexes to absorb the shock, and the forefoot grips the surface and helps propel the runner forward. Despite our common anatomy, the way a person runs, called their gait cycle, varies from one person to another. A gait cycle is all of the events that occur from the initial contact of one foot to the next successive contact of the same foot. A runner's gait cycle can be divided into 2 distinctive phases, the stance phase and the swing phase. The stance phase is the period of time when the foot is in contact with the ground. The swing phase begins when both feet are elevated off the ground and concludes when the foot regains contact with the running surface. Within the stance phase, a runner's foot goes through 3 different phases: loading, mid-stance, and propulsion. Loading begins the moment a runner's heel comes into contact with the running surface. Gradually, the rest of the foot lowers to the ground, slightly rolling inward to absorb shock. The inward rolling, known as pronation, is a natural cushioning system that the foot uses to reduce the amount of impact forces applied to the body while running. The next phase is the mid-stance, where the entire foot has contact with the ground. In this phase, the foot changes from a natural cushioning system to a lever, preparing to propel the body forward. The propulsion phase begins with the heel rising off the ground. The body's mass shifts over the forefoot, and the phase ends in the toe-off. During propulsion, the body propels itself forward and shifts weight to the opposite foot. Every time a foot strikes the ground while running, it receives an impact force that is nearly 3 times the runner's body weight. As a runner's speed increases, so does the amount of impact. The body absorbs this impact force by using its muscles to stretch resistively, chiefly by stretching the quadriceps or thigh muscles during heel strike and the calves during push-off. The body also uses joint motion to absorb impact forces. During heel strike, the knees flex and the foot pronates. Foot pronation causes internal rotation of the tibia, which in turn facilitates knee flexion, allowing the quadriceps to act as the primary shock absorber during running. Pronation is the inward medial roll of the foot, in particular the heel and arch, which occurs naturally during the loading phase as a cushioning mechanism. There are 2 reasons for a foot to pronate. One is to provide the body with a natural cushioning system that reduces the stress of impact forces the body endures while running. 2 is to assist the body in adapting to the surface that is being run on. All runners pronate to some degree. Runners can generally be classified in 3 categories of foot strike: normal or neutral pronators, overpronators, or supinators. When running, a normal foot strike begins with the heel landing nearly perpendicular to the ground, the leg angled slightly towards the outside of the heel. From there, the weight gets distributed progressively along the lateral side of the foot. As the little toe starts to touch the ground, the arch of the foot should flatten slightly, pronation. shifting the body's weight towards the inside of the foot. The heel then should start to lift off the ground, moving the weight to the medial forefoot. Those who overpronate have feet that roll inward excessively. This motion puts a surplus of stress on the leg. Overpronators are often flat-footed. Supination, also known as underpronation, is the opposite of pronation. A supinator's foot is rigid and does not naturally roll inward. The shock the body receives from running does not get absorbed naturally, causing the supinator to be more prone to overuse injuries. Often supination occurs in people with high, rigid arches. Supinators are rare. Types of feet are often categorized by arch height. The main types are high-arched, normal, or flat. A foot is high-arched when the heel and the forefoot on a foot imprint connect with a very narrow band. Feet with high arches are usually more rigid and do not typically pronate enough to effectively absorb shock. High-arched runners often, but not always, supinate. A foot is considered to be normal when the size of the arch is moderate or average. A normal foot leaves an imprint that shows the heel and forefoot connected by a wide band. The normal or neutral foot type lands on the outside of the heel and then slightly rolls inward to absorb shock. Runners that have a normal foot usually have a semi-flexible arch. A foot is considered to be flat when there is a very low or no visible arch. A flat foot leaves an imprint that is nearly complete and looks much like the entire sole of the foot. A flat foot is usually more flexible and more likely to overpronate. This excess motion can ultimately cause several different types of overuse injuries. Running shoes are designed to minimize the risk of injury through two main features: cushioning and stability. Understanding the biomechanics of how running shoes provide this protection is vital for communicating the benefits of Nike running shoes to consumers. Cushioning is provided primarily by the midsole. Cushioning systems are designed to slow down the velocity of impact with the ground while running. Midsoles compress during impact to let the foot down gracefully. There are two mechanisms that are helpful to understand cushioning and impact force: peak vertical impact, the maximum size of the impact, and loading rate, speed of the impact. Surprisingly, research shows there is little change in peak vertical impact between hard and soft shoes. Increasing the surface area of the cushioning unit can reduce the peak vertical impact by distributing the force of impact over a greater surface area. But the more important mechanism is the loading rate. Slowing the loading rate creates a more comfortable ride for the runner. The overall impact forces remain the same, but stretching out the impact over time reduces the abruptness of the shock. Nike cushioning systems have been developed in a wide variety of forms to reduce the peak vertical impact and slow the rate of loading. We'll cover those systems in more detail in the next section. The amount of support provided by a running shoe can be referred to as its stability. You should know that cushioning and stability are not separate, but interrelated qualities. Podiatric research has concluded that a healthy range of pronation of between 12 and 18 degrees should occur during foot strike. Running shoes use stability devices in order to correct gaits where pronation occurs to a more extreme degree. Nike footwear has stability devices that have been designed to control how fast the foot is pronating, how far the foot actually pronates, or how flat the arches become, and how long the foot remains pronated. A hard midsole increases the velocity of pronation at the loading phase, which is bad, but decreases the maximum degree of pronation during mid-stance, which is good. Hard midsoles do not deform or collapse during medial loading. A soft midsole decreases the velocity of pronation, which is good, but increases the degree of pronation, which is bad. The midsole deforms medially and, in effect, just keeps rolling. Stability running shoes combine a soft midsole on the lateral side and a harder, denser midsole material on the medial side. This combination, often called medial posting, both reduces the velocity of pronation and limits the degree of pronation. That's all for running biomechanics. You'll need to know these concepts to get the most out of the next module, running footwear.